Am I the asshole for going home after my in-laws excluded me from dinner at a restaurant? I, female 26, went on a family trip with my in-laws 2 weeks ago. Mother-in-law always thought that I am a bit ignorant and backwards, and that's just because I come from a lower class family compared to hers, and I have no etiquette. After we arrived at the hotel, they arranged to visit a fancy restaurant for dinner. My husband avoided telling me, and I learned it last minute after he had already gotten dressed. I asked where he was going, and he said he and his family were going out to eat, but I wasn't invited because his mom assumed that since I wouldn't be familiar with the food and how to eat it there at the restaurant, then it's better for me to stay in and eat at the hotel. I didn't argue, I just let him go. Then I packed and took the first flight home. He freaked out and called many times. And when he found out that I went home, he blew up and called me ridiculous and irrational to do this. Even said I acted in an ungrateful manner and embarrassed him in front of his family after he literally begged to have me go on the trip. We argued and he started giving me the silent treatment after he came home. Moreover, his family are indirectly criticizing me on Facebook about what I did. Did I overreact? Edit, he didn't even mention what type of food they ordered. Edit number 2, the family didn't plan on having me come along, but my husband, like he said, begged them to invite me. This isn't just with me. My brother-in-law's girlfriend wasn't invited as well. Edit 3, they paid for my expenses, so I didn't want to act like I'm being needy / or something. That's what we got. It's titled, Am I the Asshole for just posting my wife miscarried on my mom's social media after she announced our pregnancy? My wife was pregnant with our first child. We weren't telling anyone yet because it was early. My mom was over at our house and noticed some obvious clues of pregnancy. She asked about it and we were honest. We also asked her to please respect our wishes and not go telling people because it was early in the pregnancy and we wanted time to ourselves to absorb it. The pregnancy was unplanned but welcome. My mom lasted 2 weeks before she started posting about becoming a grandmother. We hadn't told her yet we had lost the baby. I was still feeling dead inside when I saw her post, so I just commented that, quote, Elise miscarried a week ago. I guess it took about an hour for my mom to see the comment and delete her post. We have been getting condolences, which we don't want, and my mom has been getting crapped on by family and friends for being so insensitive. She is mad at me for not telling her that we had lost her grandchild. I think I was an asshole because I replied that I didn't want her blabbing my family's personal life again. She is crying, and my dad says that I have every right to be upset, but that I could have been nicer. I'm just so angry right now, I don't know how to feel. Am I the asshole? It's titled, Am I the asshole for making my sister cry since I quizzed her on her knowledge because she wants to homeschool her kid? I'm going to get it out of the way and say I don't like homeschooling. I think it is almost impossible to do correctly on social and educational development. This is coming from someone that went to a shitty public school. So my sister was talking about homeschooling her kid. She said her and her husband will teach her. My sister and her husband are not the brightest people, much more physically labor people than understanding math. I tried to ask if that was a good idea, but she basically said, how hard could it be? So I started quizzing her, and these were not hard questions. For example, I asked what a verb was, name the planets, and a simple math problem. I literally asked her to do division. She could only name a few of the planets, and she just gave the definition for an adjective, not a verb. Also, just completely wrong with the math. It was kind of sad. I told her the right answer and asked if she can't do it, how will she teach the kid to read or do any math? She called me a jerk and left to cry. Her husband is on my ass, but my mom thinks it was a blessing. Am I the asshole?
My wife showed her friends our sex tapes. My wife and I have been together for 7 years, married for 2. We have a healthy and active sex life. One thing we like to do is just record ourselves. Nothing fancy, just our phones in the moment. We have a shared cloud server that we send it to. That way we can watch it on our phones and other devices without it being saved on our phones. We sometimes like watching them together, or we both travel somewhat frequently for work and watch it then. My wife has a very active group of friends that she spends a lot of time just all hanging out, chatting, and drinking wine. A typical girls' night in. They usually meet at our house, so I usually go downstairs to play games or sometimes go out with my friends. They tend to get loud when they get drunk, and whenever I don't have something playing in my headphones, I can hear them. A common topic is their sex lives. It made me feel weird at first hearing my wife and her friends talk about our sex life, but I remember that I used to talk about my sex life with my friends when I was younger. However, the other night, I heard whooping and cheering, so I crept up the stairs to see the commotion. My wife was playing some of the sex tapes on the TV for all to see. I went back downstairs and stayed down there until they were ready for me to drive them home. Usually there's some satirical cheers and such from her friends when I walk up the stairs and grab the keys. This time, a couple of them did wolf whistle, which they've never done before, and one said, "Way to go, stud." My wife shushed them and decided to come along when I dropped them off. There was a lot of drunk giggling in the car. After I got home, I wanted to talk to my wife about what I saw, but I thought she was too drunk to have a serious conversation with. We went to bed and she tried to engage, but I told her I was too tired. The next afternoon, when she was sober and less hungover, I asked her why she showed our videos to her friends. She got a deer in headlights look on her face. She then said that they were just having a good time, and she told them about our collection, and they started to beg to see them, so she obliged. I told her those were private videos, and she said that we never said that we couldn't show them to others, and it's not like she sent them to files. I think she could tell that I didn't like that answer, and she'll make it up to me, and she tried to engage. I backed up and said that I was going for a drive. I texted her that I was hanging out with some buddies for the day. When I got home that night, I set up camp on the couch and have been sleeping there the past couple nights. I don't think this is a call for divorce or anything. I'm just upset that she violated my trust, and even though we never had an agreement, I just thought it was implied. I'm also upset since she didn't apologize until I started sleeping on the couch, and that she originally tried to engage instead of apologizing when we first talked. So, what should I do?
I almost married the wrong man. Story time. Disclaimer, this is my story time. 11 years ago, I was set to marry a man that I'd only known for 6 months. As some of you might know, I am an actress, and that's how I met him. We were both cast in the same film as boyfriend and girlfriend. And because of this, the director wanted us to spend time together and create chemistry. The director even asked us to rehearse some of our kissing scenes, which really we only rehearsed one time. Was it awkward? Absolutely. But spending so much time together during rehearsals really did it. It's kind of hard to not develop feelings for somebody that you're working with who just happens to be attractive, and you're supposed to be developing this chemistry. A few weeks later, we were dating. A few months later, we decided to move to LA together to pursue our acting dreams. But soon after we moved to LA, the cracks started showing. I am the poster child for a go-getter. I'm a hustler. I will do everything in my power to chase my dreams. His motivation was not the same. While I had 4 jobs, he had 1 job. I was paying for the bills. I was even paying for his student loans. I was sending out emails and submitting both of us to projects. Are you angry yet? Because it gets worse. I was his provider in every sense of the word. Part 2 is up. I almost married the wrong man. Story time. Disclaimer, this is my story time. I was paying for the bills, providing for him, even paying off his student loans. I also cooked for him. I also helped him by trying to find him acting jobs. I was the best possible fiance he could have ever asked for. Around that time, I decided to quit some of my jobs. I transitioned over to working at a dancing club as a cocktail waitress. And this is around the time that I asked him if he could get a higher paying job. At the time, he was working at a movie theater. He was making $8 an hour, and to him, this was enough. It was enough because I was paying for the rest. And when I wanted to quit my jobs, he was against it. Why do you think? I felt like his bank account, like a debit card he could swipe every time he needed money. He would take and I would give. So when I asked him to consider getting a better job, he told me that he didn't want to because his best friend worked at the movie theater he worked at. He was comfortable. He loved his job. It was an easy job for a man. I got to watch all the free movies I wanted. What more could I ask for? A partner that would help me? No, that was too much to ask for. But can you believe that it actually does get worse? Part 3 is up. I almost married the wrong man. Story time. Disclaimer, this is my story time. When I asked him to get a higher paying job so he could help me out with the bills, he flat out said no. His job at the theater was too cozy. And a few weeks later, I experienced something horrible at the dance club that I was working at, which made me reflect on every choice I had made up until that point. I left my family to move away with somebody I didn't know, to a new city, thousands of miles away. I left my mom with major depression. To this day, I still hold so much guilt for that. And I told my fiance about the essay that I experienced at the club. His response was for me to get over it. When I told him I wanted to quit, he said no. How dare I try to quit the job that was providing for him? I broke up with him 2 days later, only to fall into an even more toxic relationship. But that's for another time. Self-care sister out.
Parting gift. Story time. I met the love of my life 7 years ago, and I very quickly realised that Steve was the one for me. I very quickly started envisioning our potential relationship together and what our life would look like. Throughout our relationship, Steve would often reach out to me to ask for money, and it was often because he was having car trouble or he couldn't pay a bill, and I would literally always help him. That is not the right colour. I just saw it as us making an investment into our life together. In all, I probably gave him about 15 grand. And after 4 years of being together, Steve popped the question. So about 6 months into our marriage, Steve was telling me that he was having car trouble. sorry, why am I unable to match my foundation? And he said that he needed about $2,000 for the repair this time. And this struck me as really odd. By this time, I knew his car as well as I knew my own. So one night when he was asleep, I went out to check what was up with his car, or what he told me was up with his car, and lo and behold, what he said was wrong. There was no sign of it. And at this point, I started to spiral. So I have never done this before, but I went on Steve's phone. And I typed in £2,000 into his messenger to see what would come up. And straight away, up popped a text from him and his ex. And turns out the ex, Amy, was also having car troubles, and she'd reached out to him to ask for some money. So I started to go back and read messages, and they went back for years. She would often ask Steve for money that he would just happily send her. And it worked out that these were the exact same amounts he was asking me for. I had become a sugar mom for my boyfriend's ex-girlfriend. So over the next couple of weeks, I started the revenge. When Steve would go to sleep, I'd start texting Amy off his phone, and I'd talk about plans to leave me, aka his wife. And I basically got it to the point where Amy was convinced that I was leaving and they were going to get back together. And every time I went on his phone, I would be sure to delete the text messages so that Steve would have no idea. This whole process went on for months. I slowly watched their text heat up between the two of them until it looked like Steve was pretty much set on leaving me. We didn't have many assets together at the time because I was finishing my surgical residency, so I knew that the divorce would be kind of quick and painless, to be fair. So the time came when I filed for divorce. I was very generous with our $10,000 worth of assets, and we split it evenly, but I decided that I wanted a little bit more. Because you see, not only is it assets that are divided up equally during a marital severance, but debt is as well. A medical school is very expensive, and if you want to get precise, it's $250,000 expensive. So since I was the one to pay for your mistress for years, you can now pay for my medical school. Enjoy my parting gift, babe.
Am I wrong for mostly ignoring my girlfriend on her birthday? So yesterday, we celebrated my male 23 girlfriend's 21st birthday. Her parents threw a big celebration with all her friends and family. For me personally, it was the first time I met anyone in the family with the exception of her parents. It was also her first birthday I celebrated with her because we've been dating for about 7 months. Now, I'm originally from Romania, from a region called Maramureș. I hope I'm saying that right. I'm probably not. I'm sorry, you guys. But I've been living abroad for 11 years now. My girlfriend mentioned at some point that one of her grandmothers was also from Romania, but we didn't discuss it in detail. So yesterday, I met my girlfriend's grandma, and what can I say? I couldn't believe how small the world was. Not only was she Romanian, but from the same country as me. So we talked and talked a lot, and she told me her life story. We reminisced about Baia Mare, and I really enjoyed the conversation. Am I wrong for mostly ignoring my girlfriend on her birthday? We reminisced about Baia Mare, and I really enjoyed the conversation, especially talking in my native language. And that's how I spent most of the party. Of course, when my girlfriend asked me to take photos with her, or when the cake came, I gave her my full attention, but for the most part, she spent time with her friends dancing and drinking, while I was just talking with her grandmother. I didn't pay it much mind, but after the party, when it was done, she told me she felt neglected by me during her birthday. And this morning, she seems pissed at me. Top comment says, nah, I would have thought she'd be excited you connect so well with her grandmother. Family approval makes relationships a lot easier. That being said, you probably could have done a better job at striking a balance between talking to her grandma and hanging out with her at her party. Another comment says 21 is a big birthday, so I can see her feeling neglected. Maybe you can make it up to her with a surprise night out and something special, but also she has to understand the connection.